Noah Zeller never planned on being 30,000 feet in the air, sipping flat champagne beside a stranger on a flight to Florence, but then again, he hadn't planned on the board blindsiding him with a last-minute merger either. He tightened his grip on the armrest as the plane taxied, the chaos of the day still pulsing behind his eyes. One moment he was in his downtown Manhattan office, yelling into a Bluetooth headset, and the next he was storming out of a conference room, grabbing the only passport he kept in his safe, and booking the next international flight out of JFK. He needed to breathe, think, escape, even if it meant dealing with the mindless chatter of whoever was assigned the seat beside him in first class. "Excuse me," a soft voice said. He looked up, already bracing himself for some influencer with half a carry-on of makeup and too much perfume. Instead, a woman with copper-brown hair pulled into a messy bun stood there, clutching a worn leather tote that didn't match anything else she wore. She was in an oversized hoodie, leggings, and sneakers that had definitely seen better days. Not what he expected in first class. "I think this is seat 2B?" she asked, her voice unsure. Noah stepped aside to let her in, barely registering her presence as she settled down beside him. He pulled out his tablet, determined to ignore her, but her elbow lightly brushed his as she wrestled with her seatbelt. "Sorry," she mumbled. "Not used to these fancy seats." He glanced at her. "First time." "Something like that," she said, not offering more. He should have left it there. But something about her tone, half embarrassed, half amused, made him glance again. She was looking out the window, her eyes wide as the plane began to lift. Not with fear. Wonder. Noah blinked. He couldn't remember the last time he looked out a window and felt anything but tired. "I'm Noah," he said before he could stop himself. She turned to him, surprised. Vera Bishop." "Nice to meet you, Vera Bishop," he said. She smiled. Small. Real. "You too, Noah." The next 10 minutes passed in silence until the turbulence hit. Vera grabbed the armrest with one hand and clutched his suit sleeve with the other. He looked down at her hand, then at her face. She was trying to act calm, but she was pale. "Relax," he said, surprisingly gently. "It's just a little bump." She let out a breath. "I hate flying, but I had to take this trip." "What's in Florence?" he asked. "My sister," she said. "She's getting married. I haven't seen her in 5 years. She's the golden child. I'm the one who stayed behind to take care of our mom when she got sick." That wasn't the answer he expected. "Let me guess. You're going to Florence for business?" she asked, eyeing the tablet and his tailored navy suit. "Something like that," he said. He wasn't about to explain that he was the CEO of Zellertech, a multi-billion-dollar software empire, and that he just walked out on the most critical meeting of his career because the board tried to force his hand. "What do you actually do?" she pressed. "Try to keep people from screwing up my company," he said dryly. She laughed. "So you're the boss?" He looked at her. "Yeah, I guess I am." Hours passed. Somewhere over the Atlantic, the conversation shifted. They talked about everything. Her love for art and how she used to paint before life got in the way. His childhood in Boston and how he hadn't taken a real vacation since college. She teased him about his perfectly pressed dress shirt and how he probably had a closet full of the same one. He found himself smiling more than he had in months. By the time the plane began its descent, Vera had fallen asleep, her head tilted slightly toward him, her hand resting on her lap. For reasons he didn't understand, Noah reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. Her skin was soft, her eyelashes long. He didn't even know her last name until 2 hours ago, and yet something about her made him pause. "Vera," he said softly as the plane bumped the runway. She blinked awake, groggy. "We're here." "We are." As they filed out of the cabin, she turned to him. "Thanks for the company, Noah. I mean it. You made the flight bearable." He nodded. "You too, Vera." They walked through the airport together until they hit the arrivals gate. She turned left toward baggage claim. He turned right toward the luxury car service waiting for him. Neither of them said goodbye. But 10 minutes later, as Noah climbed into the back of a sleek black Mercedes, he looked out the window and saw her standing by the carousel, struggling to lift a suitcase almost as big as she was. "Stop the car," he said. The driver slammed the brakes. Noah stepped out, walked straight into the terminal without a word, and made his way to her. She looked up, confused. "Didn't you leave?" "I did. But then I realized something." "What?" "I didn't want to." Her eyes softened. "You're serious?" "I know it's crazy. We just met. But I'm not ready to say goodbye to you yet." She laughed, but it wasn't mocking. It was surprised. "Warm. Then don't." He grabbed her suitcase without asking and turned toward the exit. "Come with me," he said. "Where?" she asked. "To dinner." "To wherever. I just know I want more time with you." She hesitated, then smiled. "Okay." As they walked toward the exit side by side, Vera glanced up at him. "You still haven't told me your last name." "Noah Zeller." She stopped in her tracks. "Wait, Zeller? As in Zellertech?" "Yeah," he said, watching her reaction. She blinked. "So, you're actually a billionaire?" He shrugged. "Don't hold it against me." Vera laughed. "I won't. But dinner's on you." "Deal," he said, pulling open the car door for her. And as they drove off into the golden Italian sunset, neither of them realized just how much that last-minute flight had changed everything. The villa Noah had rented was nestled in the hills above Florence, a modern marvel carved into the Tuscan countryside. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the rolling vineyards below, and the infinity pool stretched toward the horizon like a mirror to the sky. Vera stepped out of the car and blinked against the late afternoon light, her gaze sweeping across the stone terrace and the grove of cypress trees flanking the driveway. "You live here?" she asked, her voice caught between awe and suspicion. "I don't live here," Noah said, handing the driver a tip. "I booked it for the week." She raised an eyebrow. "For just you." "I like quiet," he said, then paused. "And space." Vera laughed under her breath, her sneakers crunching against the gravel as she followed him into the villa. "Most people book a hotel room. You rent an estate." He glanced over his shoulder. "You hungry?" She shrugged. "Depends. Am I about to be served truffle pasta by a private chef?" "Actually, yes." She stopped in the foyer. "You're joking." Noah kept walking. "Come on." Inside, the villa was all clean lines and understated luxury. White marble floors, glass staircases, and abstract art that looked like it belonged in a museum. But Vera didn't seem impressed by the space so much as she was trying to find her place within it. She clutched her tote like a shield, her eyes skimming over leather couches and gold fixtures without awe. He led her to the terrace, where a linen-draped table overlooked the valley. A man in a crisp white shirt nodded politely before removing the silver cloches that covered their food. Steam rose from handmade tortellini in saffron cream, accompanied by grilled figs and wine poured from a bottle, so old it didn't have a label. Vera sat but didn't touch anything. "This is a little intense. I can ask him to make something simpler." She picked up her fork. "No, it's not that. It's just surreal. A few hours ago, I was debating whether to get a sandwich from the airport vending machine. Now I'm having dinner like I accidentally walked into a Vogue photo shoot." Noah twirled pasta onto his fork. "You didn't walk into anything. I invited you." She studied him. "Why?" That single word hung in the air between them. Noah set down his fork. "I don't know. You're different." "Different how?" "You didn't ask what I do. You didn't try to pitch me an app or hand me a resume. You didn't even blink when I said my last name." "I blinked," she said. "Internally." He smiled. "You didn't change the way you talk to me. Should I have?" "No. That's the point." Vera took a bite, chewed, then glanced out at the fading sun. "This doesn't happen to me. Fancy dinners with strangers in Italy. It feels like someone else's life." Noah leaned back in his chair. "Maybe it's time it became yours." She gave him a look. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I don't know who you are yet." He nodded slowly. "Then ask me." She set down her glass. "All right. What's the worst decision you've ever made?" He didn't answer right away. The breeze picked up, rustling the vines below, pushing someone away before they had the chance to prove me wrong. What happened? I thought I was protecting myself. But really, I was just afraid. Vera didn't respond. Her eyes searched his, but she didn't press. Instead, she asked, "What are you escaping?" That made him pause. "Nothing," he said at first. Then, quieter, "Everything." She tilted her head. "It's complicated," he added. "Good," she said. "I don't trust people who aren't." They finished dinner in companionable quiet, the kind that felt earned rather than awkward. When the chef retreated inside, Vera stood and wandered to the edge of the terrace. The sky had turned a deep mauve, the hills below glowing faintly under the last touch of sun. Her silhouette looked painted against the dusk, loose strands of auburn hair illuminated like copper thread. Noah joined her, hands in his pockets. "You ever think about what your life would be like if one tiny thing had gone differently?" she asked without turning. "All the time. I almost didn't get on that flight," she said. "I had a panic attack in the bathroom before boarding. I thought about calling my sister and telling her I couldn't come." "What stopped you?" She looked at him. A stranger held the door open and said, "You'll regret it if you don't go." I don't even know why he said it, but I listened. Noah watched her. "Maybe that stranger changed everything." She laughed softly. "Or maybe I just needed someone to say it out loud." They stood there a moment longer, the silence filled by the sound of cicadas and the rustle of olive trees. Then she turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "I should go," she said. "I'll have the driver take you." She hesitated. "You didn't bring me here to impress me, did you?" "No, because I'm not impressed. I'm confused, and curious, and a little overwhelmed, but not impressed." Noah stepped closer. "Good." Her eyes held his. "I don't do flings. This doesn't feel like one." She nodded once. "Then we'll see." He watched her leave, the taillights of the car disappearing down the winding road. The moment she was gone, the villa felt colder, emptier. He walked back inside, poured himself a glass of wine, and sat on the edge of the pool with his bare feet in the water. He didn't know what this was yet, but something had shifted. Something real. And for the first time in a long time, Noah Zeller wasn't thinking about boardrooms or quarterly reports. He was thinking about Vera Bishop and the way her eyes didn't flinch from his. Vera adjusted the strap of her purse as she stepped into the courtyard of the ancient villa her sister had rented for the wedding week. The stone walls were draped in ivy and the scent of lemon trees clung to the warm air. Laughter echoed from the back garden where a group of guests lounged under string lights and drank Aperol spritzes. She spotted her sister, Celeste, in a flowing cream dress, laughing too loud and holding court like she always did. When Celeste turned and saw her, her smile faltered for a split second, quick but unmistakable. "You made it," Celeste said, pulling her in for an air kiss that never quite landed. "I told you I would. I wasn't sure you'd actually come after everything." Vera stepped back. "Neither was I." Celeste gestured toward the buffet. "There's food in the back, and Luca's family brought cases of wine from their vineyard. Try not to say anything too weird to Nana. She still thinks you're studying veterinary medicine. I work at a framing shop. She doesn't have to know that." Vera sighed and made her way toward the garden, feeling like an extra in someone else's celebration. She'd expected awkwardness, but it still stung to see how little her absence had mattered over the years. She filled a plate with olives and cheeses, then took a seat near a hedge just out of earshot. From here, she could watch without being watched. Her phone buzzed. One new message. Unknown number. She hesitated, then opened it. "Are you free tomorrow afternoon?" No name, but she didn't need one. She looked up at the stars beginning to press through the dusk. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Then she locked the phone without replying. The next day, Florence was loud and golden and full of tourists. Vera walked the narrow streets alone, ducking into galleries and small bookstores. She kept her phone in her pocket but didn't check it. Not even once. Until a voice called her name. She turned. Noah stood at the edge of the piazza, dressed in dark jeans and a casual button-down rolled at the sleeves. He didn't look polished. He looked real. And he was holding 2 cones of gelato, one already dripping down the side. "You didn't answer," he said. "I wasn't sure I should." "I'm glad you did." She didn't move. Did I? You're here. He held out one of the cones. Pistachio. I took a gamble. She took it without a word. They walked along the river, the air warm and alive with music from street performers. The bridges threw shadows across the water as they strolled in silence, the city humming around them. I looked you up, Vera said finally. I figured. You're bigger than I thought. I get that a lot. I mean your company, your name, your reach. Noah looked ahead. Does it change how you see me? I don't know yet. I wasn't hiding it from you. You didn't say it either. I didn't want it to matter. I'm not used to people who can afford to not be judged. He stopped walking. I'm not perfect, Vera. I've made mistakes. I've ruined partnerships. I've pushed people away. But I'm not pretending to be anything I'm not. I don't want you to. He looked at her, really looked. Then what do you want? She didn't answer right away. To not feel like a tourist in someone else's life. You think this is mine? She gestured around them. Isn't it? I don't even remember the last time I walked through a city without checking my email every 10 steps. Or ate something with my hands. Or talked to someone who didn't want something from me. Her eyes met his. What do you want from me? Nothing, he said. That's why I'm here. They kept walking. At the edge of Ponte Santa Trinita, he leaned against the stone railing and watched the water. She stood beside him, unsure of what came next. I have to go back soon, he said after a while. Back to New York? Yes. There's a board meeting on Monday. And if you stay, they'll think I've lost control. Have you? I think I'm finally starting to. She turned to face him. Do you want me to come with you? He didn't answer right away. Part of me does. And the other part? Wants to see if you'll ask me again. Vera stepped closer, their shoulders brushing. I don't chase people. I'm not asking you to. She tilted her head. You left New York in the middle of a war zone, didn't you? I left because I didn't like who I was becoming. And who are you now? He looked at her, his voice rougher than before. Someone who wants to know what it's like to wake up beside you in a place that's his, not rented. Someone who wants to see what happens if we stop pretending this is temporary. The gelato in her hand had melted completely. I don't do dreams, she said quietly. They fall apart. Then don't call it a dream, he said. Call it a choice. The air between them thickened, and for a moment, Florence disappeared behind the weight of everything unsaid. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper, handing it to him. What's this? My return ticket. It's for tomorrow. He unfolded it, then looked at her. Are you asking me to stop you? No, she said. I'm giving you the choice. He folded the paper again and slipped it into his pocket. Then I'll see you tomorrow, he said. But not at the airport. She nodded once, then turned and walked away. Noah watched her disappear down the street, the crowd swallowing her like a tide. He didn't move for a long time. He just stood there, the river below him and the weight of that folded ticket pressing against his heart. Rain spattered against the arched windows of the gallery, soft and rhythmic, like the city itself was holding its breath. Vera stood in front of a massive canvas, oil and charcoal layered so thick the texture seemed to reach out toward her. The exhibit was tucked away behind a quiet church near the Arno, its walls lined with the work of local artists, raw, unfussed, and unapologetically emotional. The kind of place she would have spent hours in if this were any other trip. But this wasn't any other trip. Her fingers skimmed the edge of an old exhibit pamphlet she found at the entrance. Something about the way the artist had used negative space made her uneasy. The figure in the painting wore a mask, but the eyes were too human, too real. She stepped back, crossing her arms, her thoughts louder than the rain. Behind her, the door creaked. She didn't turn. You came, Noah said, his voice lower than usual, almost uncertain. I wasn't sure you'd remember the address. I asked the gallery owner. Vera finally looked at him. His hair was damp, his coat unbuttoned. He looked nothing like the man from the terrace dinner or the riverside walk. He looked like someone who hadn't slept. You said you'd see me today, she said. And I meant it. Then why didn't you wait? He took a step closer. Because I needed to make sure I wasn't asking you into something I hadn't figured out yet. Vera tilted her head. And have you? I flew back to New York last night. That stopped her. He nodded. There's a private entrance at the Florence airport. I didn't want to leave without knowing what I'd be walking back into. You left. And came back this morning. Her mouth parted but no sound came. I walked into that boardroom and told them the merger's off. I told them if they wanted someone to run Zellertech who only cared about the next acquisition, they could find someone else. Vera blinked slowly. You gave up a billion-dollar deal? I gave up pretending the company's survival depends on me being miserable. They'll push back. They already have. And you're okay with that? I'm terrified, he admitted. But for once, I don't want to be the guy who chooses control over everything else. She looked at him for a long moment. Why come back? Because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About not wanting to be a tourist in someone else's life. And I realized I didn't want to be a stranger in mine. Vera placed the pamphlet on the bench beside her. I didn't ask you to do any of that. I know. That's why it mattered. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't heavy. He took another step toward her. You said you don't do dreams. So let's not make this one. Let's make it something we build. I don't know what that would even look like. Neither do I, he said. But I'd rather figure it out with you than go back to pretending I'm fine without it. Her eyes flicked to the painting again. I haven't painted in almost 4 years. Why? I stopped believing it would ever be anything more than a habit I couldn't afford. You brought your sketchbook on the plane. She didn't answer. I saw it, he said. You were drawing while I slept. I didn't think you noticed. I notice everything about you now. Her breath caught slightly. And what happens when this stops feeling new? Then we keep choosing each other anyway. Vera looked at him like she was seeing something she hadn't allowed herself to believe in. You're really not going back? I'm staying in Florence for the rest of the week. After that, I don't know. But I know I won't be leaving without you. She took a slow step forward until they were only inches apart. I'm not a solution to whatever you're running from, she said. I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking you to be the person I run toward. She hesitated, then reached up and brushed a raindrop from his temple. You always this dramatic? Only when it counts. Behind them, a group of tourists entered the gallery, laughing and shaking off umbrellas. The moment snapped, but neither moved. You're serious about this, she said. I'm not capable of faking anything around you. Vera let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. All right. All right. If we're doing this, we're doing it fully. No halfway. Fully, he echoed. And I need space to finish what I came here for. Your sister's wedding. She nodded. And when that's done, we figure it out. I'll be waiting. Later that week, Vera stood barefoot in the villa courtyard, watching her sister and Luca dance under a canopy of lights. The music was soft, a violin playing something slow and old. Celeste looked happy, genuinely, unfilteredly happy, and for the first time in years, Vera didn't feel like a shadow standing beside her. She felt steady, present. She slipped away before dessert and walked down the path that led toward the olive grove. At the edge of the hill, a car waited. The driver opened the door without a word. Inside, Noah sat in the back seat, a folded sketchbook in his lap. You sure? He asked. Vera slid in beside him. No, he smiled. Good. The car pulled away, winding down the road that cut through the valley. They didn't speak for a while. There was no need. At the airport, he led her through the private terminal. The jet was already prepped, engines humming softly. I told him no champagne, he said. Felt too cliché. She laced her fingers through his. You're learning. As they took off, Florence faded beneath them, the hills melting into clouds. Vera leaned her head against his shoulder, eyes closed. What now? She asked. We land in New York. You move into my place. I didn't agree to that. He looked down at her. You want your own studio? Obviously. Done. She smiled. And you're okay if I paint again? I hope you do. She turned her head toward him. You're really not afraid of what this could become? I'm terrified, he said. She reached up, touched his jaw. Me too. And somewhere over the Atlantic, two people who had never planned for any of this stopped pretending they were anything less than completely undone by each other. No flight plan, no guarantees, just one last-minute decision that changed everything. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the penthouse that stretched across the top floor of a limestone high-rise in Tribeca. Warm light spilled from recessed fixtures, glinting off polished walnut floors and glass walls that framed the skyline like a painting. The city pulsed outside, alive and indifferent, but inside everything felt still. Vera stepped in slowly, her hands still clasped in Noah's. "I thought penthouses were supposed to feel cold," she said, her voice low. "They usually do," Noah replied, setting down her suitcase. "I added the warmth after realizing I hated everything about it." She let her fingers trail along the edge of a sculpted credenza. "You did this yourself?" "I hired someone, then made them undo half of it when it didn't feel like home." "And now?" He turned to her. "Now I'm not sure what home means, but I know it needs to include you." Vera walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the glittering sprawl of Manhattan. The apartment behind her was minimalist, but not sterile. A single oversized canvas hung above the fireplace, black ink on raw linen, chaotic strokes that suggested movement without form. She turned slowly. "That's yours, isn't it?" Noah nodded once. "I started it 2 years ago. Never finished." "Why not?" "I didn't know how to end it." Vera stepped closer, her eyes scanning the jagged lines. "Maybe it wasn't ready to end." He watched her as she touched the edge of the canvas with careful reverence. "I want you to paint again." "I will. Here, if you'll make room for me." "I already have." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "This isn't a vacation anymore." "I know. You don't know what I'm like when I'm overwhelmed. Or when I shut down. Or when I go quiet for days and pretend I'm fine. I'll learn." "Noah, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be here." She hesitated, then walked to the center of the room and dropped her bag. "Then give me a wall." He frowned, confused. "For my work," she clarified. "I want to see what it looks like when I stop hiding it." Without missing a beat, Noah crossed to the living room and pointed to a blank wall opposite the fireplace. "Yours. We'll order the easels, canvases, whatever you need. I'll need space. And silence sometimes. You'll have it." She tilted her head. "And what about you? You've built your life around motion. What happens when you slow down?" He stepped closer, his voice lower. "I stopped missing it." They stood only inches apart, the hum of the city still audible through the glass. She looked up at him, and for the first time since that flight, neither of them felt like they were in between moments. They were here. "I never thought I'd be the kind of person who ends up in a place like this," she said. "You didn't end up here," he said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You chose it. And if I get scared, then I'll hold the fear with you." She blinked, her eyes suddenly glassy. "That sounds like love." "It is." His hand slid around her waist, and when she kissed him, it wasn't urgent or hesitant. It was steady, grounded, like they had finally stepped into the life they'd both been circling for too long. Weeks passed, but time didn't feel linear anymore. Vera claimed the wall, then a second. Paint stained her knuckles and the floor, and she stopped apologizing for both. She set up a small studio in the sunroom with a skylight that poured light over her shoulders as she worked. She began submitting pieces anonymously to galleries. She didn't tell Noah at first. He found out when he saw one of her pieces hanging in a Chelsea exhibit under a pseudonym. He bought it before the showing ended and hung it in the penthouse without saying a word. She noticed it one morning, paused in front of it, but never asked how it got there. Instead, she touched his shoulder as she passed and whispered, "Thank you for believing in the version of me I hadn't dared to imagine." Noah, in turn, pulled back from Zeller Tech. He appointed a new COO, took meetings from home when he had to, but more often than not, he was found barefoot in the kitchen, burning toast and reading the paper. He still wore his watch, but only checked it when Vera wasn't looking. They fought, of course. Vera hated the way he left dishes half-washed in the sink. Noah couldn't understand how someone could paint for 12 hours without drinking water. But every argument ended with them in the same place, together, in the quiet, choosing each other again. One crisp October afternoon, Noah took her to the High Line. They walked in silence, the city stretching below them. Vera wore a scarf he'd bought her from a tiny boutique in Florence, and his hand was warm in hers. He stopped suddenly, turned to her. "There's something I want you to see." She frowned. "Here." He pointed ahead where a small crowd had gathered near a pop-up exhibit. In the center, on an easel, sat one of her paintings. She froze. "How did?" "I called the curator. Told them I'd found someone they needed to meet. You said you didn't want to use your name too. I didn't. I sent the email from yours." She turned to him slowly. "You did what? You were ready. You just needed someone to push the door open." Her eyes filled, but she didn't speak. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim velvet box. "I know this isn't the usual way," he said, "but nothing about us has been. And I don't care about grand stages or flash mobs or whatever people do now. I just want this just us." He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Nothing ostentatious, but elegant. A thin gold band with a single sapphire, the same blue as the sky over Florence the morning she first kissed him. "Marry me," he said. "Not because it's perfect, but because it's ours." Vera didn't cry. She laughed. A full, bright, disbelieving laugh that echoed down the path. Then she leaned in and whispered against his mouth, "Yes." The applause from strangers came later, but neither of them noticed. They were already gone, lost in a kiss that felt like a full circle finally closing. Months passed. The wedding was small, a rooftop garden wrapped in ivy. Just close friends, a few family members including Celeste, who hugged Vera longer than expected and apologized in the kind of way that mattered. Vera wore a simple dress with a low back and paint smudges on her wrists she hadn't managed to wash off. Noah wore no tie and kissed her before the officiant had even finished the sentence. They danced under fairy lights, not because they had to, but because the music moved through them in a way that felt like breathing. Later that night, in their home overlooking the city, Vera stood by the fireplace, holding a brush. She turned to him. "I think I'm ready to finish your painting." He crossed the room, kissed the side of her neck. "Then let's finish it together." And so they did. With no more questions. No more maybes. Just one life shared. Fully. Fiercely. Freely. Forever.